December 7, 1941. Residents of Wado Island, Hawaii, awakened by sudden explosions and gunshots. After a few minutes, hundreds of Japanese planes arrived over the U.S. Pacific Fleet. The fleet was moored at Pearl Harbor at the time. Japanese aircraft were armed with torpedoes and machine guns. They will arrive in just 2 hours, hitting some of the most powerful ships in the U.S. Navy. When the attack ended, airports and warships, it's a sea of fire. More than 2,400 Americans were killed. By the end of 1940, much of the world is at war. The aggressive expansion goals of the Japanese Empire threatened. The United States passes effectively cut off Japan's and other important resources. It limited its ability to wage war. This leaves Japan with two options. One is to agree to the request of the United States, withdraw from the occupied northeast China, and ensure that important islands in the Pacific, the safety of the territory, and this is something that Japan will never agree to. The second is the invasion of the East Indies and British territories in the Pacific. Thus, secure access to vital oil and rubber supplies. If Japan chooses the latter, from the Philippines and the U.S. Navy fleet stationed at Pearl Harbor, it could cut off vital supply lines it needs. To ensure that these amphibious attack can proceed smoothly, Yamamoto plans to target the U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor, launch a swift and devastating strike. In this way, it can help Japan in the Pacific region strive for a one-year window. Yamamoto's plan is actually relatively simple. Assemble all aircraft carriers into a battle group, sailing to Hawaii, then split into two waves. The U.S. strategic ships stationed there, aircraft carrier fleets, launch a surprise attack, sink or destroy them all in one morning. Pearl Harbor itself, on Oahu Island, in Hawaii, approximately 8,000 kilometers from the west coast of the continental United States. Well, in theory, his defense is very tight. It has a large number of military airports, of which Wheeler Airport, Kaneohe Bay Airport, Sea-Cam Airport, and Delavan Airport are the main airports, servicing 200 aircraft on the island. But actually, of these, only about 50 aircraft can really be used for defense. But they were hit by a new type of radar system protection. The system can identify approaching enemy formations for the 31 anti-aircraft guns distributed on the island, and coastal batteries to provide early warning. Not to mention, Pearl Harbor itself also had more than 100 naval vessels, everything from gunboats to strategic ships. By the end of 1941, more than 50,000 U.S. military personnel stationed on Oahu Island, although all the naval power of the Pacific Fleet concentrated in one place. There is a clear risk of attack. But for Japan, the potential payoff is simply too high, can't be ignored. So, in November, a large task force has left Hitachi Port. The destination is Hawaii. The attack core of this force, it is Japan's 6 aircraft carriers: Gia, Flying Dragon, Shanghai and Ru. It carried more than 420 aircraft in total. This is the historical scale, the largest air and naval force. They were accompanied by a mixed fleet, including 2 strategic ships, 3 cruisers, 9 destroyers, 8 cruise ships, and 23 submarines. 5 of them also carried an extra double Pisces Thunder-armed miniature submarine. Participate in There were 3 main types of aircraft at Pearl Harbor. The first was the Zero. He is fast, highly maneuverable, and powerful. Will be used to control the air superiority of the target area. The attack will involve 79 aircraft. The most numerous are Nakajima B-5N, 297 carrier-based bomber. This is a single-engine, 3-person carrier bomber. A total of 143 aircraft were involved in the attack. 40 of them were equipped with torpedoes. Pearl Harbor, as a port, very shallow water depth. The average depth is only 12 meters. This poses a problem for torpedoes. Because of torpedoes, it will exceed this depth when initially entering the water. To avoid this situation, they put wooden go games in the torpedo. These tail flags break on impact, but the key is to prevent the torpedo from sinking too deep. The third type of aircraft primarily involved in the third A-199 of Love dive bomber. It is easily identifiable by its fixed landing gear. A dive bomber is a very maneuverable two-seater precision bomber, equipped with a Type 909,250 kilograms There will be Type 99 dive bombers attack Pearl Harbor. On the morning of December 7th, Japanese attack troops arrive at Ford Island. The crew began their final inspection. Something to keep in mind. All these actions are taking place under two names, between nations at peace. In fact, one is still controversial. The church that vaguely declared war on the United States, probably before the first wave of attacks. It has been sent and received. But anyway, no one at Pearl Harbor knew about it. 5 to 50,183 planes roared off, fly south towards their target. Americans realized that this day will be extraordinary. The first sign came at 6:37 a.m. Explosions were heard south of Pearl Harbor. Very few people knew. The destroyer, USS Ward, Japanese mini-submarines attempting to enter the port, opened fire and sink it. This was the first shot in the Pacific War, and the first casualties. Exactly 25 minutes later, at Opener Mobile Radar Station, Private USV Lockhart and George Elliott, a large group of aircraft has been detected approaching Wawa Island. They reported the news to the commander, but it was finally believed to be that morning. A batch flown in from the continental United States, 17 bomb opportunities to alert ground personnel of danger. Lost like this. 7:15, the 167 planes of the second wave of attacks begin to take off. Also fly south. Around 7:40 in the morning, the leading aircraft of the first wave of attacks approaching their goal. There were thick clouds over Pearl Harbor. It's hard to see the target. But Japanese Air Commander Mijin Fukita, in the crevices of the clouds, prejudice against warships moored around Ford Island, and he realized that the all-important aircraft carriers were not there. So, all fire will be directed at the strategic ship. Around the same time, the first attack begins. Strike down unsuspecting U.S. airports. Due to the suddenness of the first attack, more than 180 aircraft were destroyed on the ground. That morning, only a few American pilots were able to take off, engage the enemy. In a few minutes, most of the planes on Wahoo Island were destroyed. At Pearl Harbor, the first planes also began their attack. 6 Type 97 bombers carrying torpedoes, locked on the seemingly valuable Utah. The strategic mirror doesn't realize he is now a training ground. A squadron dropped 6 torpedoes. 2 of them directly hit his hull. The people on the boat were thrown from their bunks. 320 kilograms of explosives blew a huge hole in the hull. The lower deck immediately began to flood. Amid the chaos, Utah begins to tilt to the left chord. People scrambled to the upper deck. By 8:12, the Utah had rolled over. Survivors run towards the shore. 58 officers and soldiers failed to escape. They were born that morning. One of the earliest casualties. Around the same time the Utah was hit, other Type 97 bombers are making a U-turn. Each plane flies smoothly at an altitude of 50 feet. The pilots are aiming for those in front. Huge goal. A moment later, 7 torpedoes hit their targets. USS California, Oklahoma, and the West Virginia were hit multiple times each. The people on every boat are scrambling, and then you run to the main splint to operate the anti-aircraft gun. But some found the ammunition insufficient, or the gun cannot be operated. At the same time, the attacks continue. Oklahoma, in a short time, at least 3 more torpedo attacks start tilting to the left chord. Finally turned at 8-2. 429 Marines were killed in the attack. So far, most of the 40 torpedoes have been launched. The first wave of Type 97 bombers carrying bombs continue the attack. In a few minutes, 8 armor-piercing bullets hit various ships around the port. Many people are on deck or in the water when struggling to escape under fire. Aboard the Arizona, at 7:55, the alarm went off for the full assembly. Less than 5 minutes later, a pair of Type 97 horizontal bombers flew over. Dropped 10 modified missiles at the target. 16-inch armor-piercing round hit the deck of the Arizona, caused severe structural damage, and started a fire on the boat. But disaster struck at 8-6. The last shell penetrated the deck, possibly hit under turret 2. Former ammunition triggers a huge explosion, throwing debris hundreds of feet into the air, blow the ship in half. Hundreds of people died instantly. In the next few minutes, more people will drown or die from their injuries. because the ship sank to the bottom of the port. A total of 1,177 crew members overtook 75% of personnel. It was also more than half of the total casualties that day died on the Arizona. In the next 15 minutes, the first wave of remaining aircraft passes through the port. Search for more goals, shooting people in the sea and on the shore at the same time. 8:15, the Americans began to fight back. More and more intense anti-aircraft drive away some enemy planes and shot down other enemy aircraft at very close range. One of them was Dory Miller on the West Virginia. Although not trained in cannon trees, but he also uses his own .50 caliber Palaning machine gun. Joined the firepower to defend Pearl Harbor, but exhausted in battle. He received orders to abandon ship. Be the last batch. One of the people who left the burning West Virginia. The West Virginia was sinking to the bottom of the harbor. He also rescued more wounded on the way, but he didn't survive the war. This is the Liscon Bay. Killed when the aircraft carrier sank. One of the 644 The first wave of attacks ended at 8:45. There was a brief lull over Pearl Harbor, but it's also a mess on the ground. Silence won't last long. After 5 minutes, I heard the sound of the engine again. This time, it came from the east. The second wave of attacks began to attack this port on fire. Type 97 bomber, Type 99 dive bomber, and the Zero again. But this wave has no torpedoes. Mainly conventional bombs and strafing caused damage, and the fire from Ford Island is getting heavier and heavier. Many planes were forced to fly south. Attack targets closer to the naval base. This includes ongoing repairs, consuming destroyer cargo. 3. Dropped by the Type 99 dive bomber. The 250 kg bomb hit him. Consumption immediately starts to burn. 30 minutes later, the flames spread to his former ammunition depot. Triggers a huge explosion while consuming and being hit. The last remaining strategic ship, USS Nevada, trying to set sail to escape the carnage. He's heading for the port exit. This move caused 14 Type 99s in the second wave. Attention of dive bombers. They dive in groups of 3. There are at least 5 to 50 kg bombs. Hit the Nevada. One of them penetrated the deck, detonated near the gas tank, caused multiple fires. To prevent the ammunition depot from being deliberately flooded before the causing the Nevada to sink even lower in the water. For fear of sinking the ship and blocking the port entrance, the Nevada was deliberately stranded here. Near Hospital Corner, he burned there for hours. A total of 90 soldiers on the USS Nevada died that day. Until 10 a.m., it's all over now. The last batch of Japanese planes has returned, leaving Pearl Harbor as a burning ruin. Thousands of casualties. The attack lasted just over 2 hours. Returned to the Japanese attack. The second wave of bombers eventually returned to their aircraft carrier. The third wave of attacks was finally cancelled. They rejoiced at the success, dealing a severe blow to the U.S. Pacific Fleet, and he only lost 29 aircraft, and 55 crew members, and 10 personnel on 5 miniature submarines. One of the planes that failed to return was the Zero pilot aircraft that attracts for virtues. His badly damaged plane crash landing on Niihau Island, Hawaii. At first, the islanders didn't know Pearl Harbor was attacked. He also helped the pilot who had to make an emergency landing. But when the news spread, there was a fight. Attract the monastery and lose their lives in this battle. Event is known as the Niihau Incident. A total of 18 U.S. ships were destroyed, sink, or run. Dozens of ships were also damaged. However, casualties are the headline news. 2,403 Americans. More than 1,100 people make December 7th the most recorded day in Hawaii. The most lethal incident, random. President Roosevelt addresses the American people and declared war on Japan. The counterattack on the Pacific battlefield kicked off.